Hi, I'm Barrie Rose, and in this podcast, I talk to content creators and advocates in the progressive space, ultimately making the world a better place. Today, I talked to Olivia Julianna, who I was really excited to talk to because last year I was at Pride at the White House, and all the pillars were colorful, like rainbow. And my friend pointed out her, and she was like at the front of the crowd. And at the time, I wasn't aware of her content. But then I looked into it and I was like, damn, that's an awesome creator. So, excited to talk to her. Enjoy. Olivia Julianna. Hi.
Hi.
So great to see you. I see you as this bold, funny, passionate Texas-born leader and political creator and activist. How would you describe yourself?
I mean, that sounds right. That feels right, I guess. In my head, very much, I'm just like a 22-year-old who says things on the internet. Like that's kind of how I perceive myself. Sometimes I still feel like I'm 17, like when I started doing all of this, and then I will be in my apartment and be like, wow, this is my house, like I pay for this, and like I'm an actual adult now, and it's a little jarring because it doesn't feel like that. But yeah, no, I feel like that feels accurate.
Yeah, well, congratulations on paying for your apartment at your age. I feel like a lot of people at 22 are still kind of figuring things out. And I mean, I'm sure we're all always figuring things out, but how did you get into content creation? I mean, did you really get into it when you were 17?
Yeah, I did. I had just finished my junior year of high school. This was in 2020, and I lived in the middle of nowhere. So, I had terrible internet connection. This was the middle of the pandemic, and I was just so bored out of my mind. Because I lived in the middle of nowhere, so it was just me and my dad in this little rural farm town, and I was just watching, everything that was going on in the world at the time just unfold on social media. So I was watching COVID. I was watching, the Black Lives Matter movement resurgence after the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I was watching Trump's response to all of this as president. And I was just so frustrated because I just felt so trapped. And I remember going to my dad and telling him, this all feels so wrong to me. I really want to go into Houston, which is the nearest big city. I really want to go into Houston, and I want to march. Like, I want to be part of this because I think this is what's right. And my dad at the time was not very supportive, and he kind of said something along the lines of, if you go march, don't come home. And so I was kind of like, I felt like I didn't really have a choice. I can't go. I'm 17. I'm not going to have anywhere else to go. So I was like, I can't do it. But the loophole that I found was, but I can make TikToks about it. And so I started making TikToks. This is early days of political TikTok, about the election, about why young people should be involved, why they should be voting. And I wasn't even old enough to vote in that election myself. I was a month too young to be able to vote in the 2020 election. So that's really all how it started, and it just kind of kept going from there, through the election. My page kept growing, and then as time went on, I, moved to different platforms and different things started happening, and, here we are 5 years later, and it doesn't feel like it's been that long, that it's been, half a decade since I started doing this, but it has been. I started when I was 17, and it took me 15 minutes to upload a TikTok because of how bad the internet was in my house.
Oh, wow. Yes, I remember COVID TikTok era. I actually started at that time too. I think it was 2020, and that was when the algorithm was really popping. Like, you could go viral really quickly and like grow massively. Those were nice TikTok times.
Yeah, everything felt so much more relaxed and low stake, and the humor was so much more. I feel like not less serious, but it just felt like it really did feel like this is just an app where a bunch of teenagers are like screwing around. And over the last 5 years, it feels like it's just exploded in a way I don't think any of us ever saw happening.
Yeah, it is so cool that like normal people can have a voice and like create their own platform and be able to like share their opinions and then grow and then be able to like turn it into a career. I feel like that's so incredible. Did you see yourself going into politics before that, or were you like really politically oriented before that, or that's just seeing everything kind of propelled you to care more deeply?
You know, I was really interested in politics and government, and I was actually going to go to college to be a teacher. My plan was to either be an English literature teacher or a government and local politics teacher. That's what I wanted to do. I was going to go to school and graduate and move back to my hometown. I'd take over my high school's yearbook program, which I was a part of, and I was going to be a teacher. That's what the plan was. And then TikTok just changed everything, and I ended up starting college for my political science degree, which is taking me forever to finish because I keep taking time off for elections. But the plan was very much not to go into politics. It was just to have a very quiet, normal, small town kind of life.
Do you think you'll just stay in Texas forever? Is that your base for good?
You know, I get asked this question a lot, and I go back and forth on this question a lot because I've only ever lived in Texas, and I love traveling. I love going to other places. I love DC. Even, you know, people with Trump there now, it's more Trumpy and, you know, the National Guard, but, you know, I've been around National Guard before. I live in Texas. Abbott likes to deploy them out too. But it's just such a special, wonderful place. It's just so full of culture and art and history that I just really love being there. But, you know, Texas this is home for me. All my family is here, and my sisters, they all have kids. I love being an aunt. I love being an aunt. And I feel like it would be really hard for me to leave my family here and go somewhere else. But there's also just so much work to be done here constantly. And, you know, I feel like if I'm here, I'm never going to not be busy. And I like to be busy. So I think it kind of balances out a little bit.
Yes, it's really necessary for people like you to be in states like Texas. I mean, there's not like so many progressive creators there. I know a couple. Year One, Katie for Change. She's a good Texas voice. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about being in Columbus, Ohio, because I'm from California, and that's where all my family is, like Los Angeles. But it feels like being in Ohio is really necessary right now. Like, we can actually make a difference here as opposed to being in a... I guess right now it matters, I mean, for the redistricting vote to be in California.
Yeah.
But
well, in Ohio, you know, in Ohio, you've got the governor's race next year. Vivek Ramaswamy could potentially be your next governor. That's interesting.
Oh no.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, I think living in Texas as a creator, it's important, especially just because it is such a large state. It's just so big. You know, there's 30 million people that live here. And, you know, just the county that I live in Harris County. There's over 5 million people that live here in Harris County alone. And, you know, there's this old saying, as goes Texas, so goes the nation. And it basically means everything that happens in Texas is not isolated to Texas. It happens somewhere else too. And that's also how I feel about the politics, is every time something happens politically in Texas, it is going to spread somewhere else. So a lot of the things that you see happen on a federal level from the Trump administration, they're things that started in Texas. You know, Trump wants to ban sanctuary cities. Texas already did that. They set the precedent for that. You know, they want to do things at a federal level with education. Well, Texas just passed school vouchers, and they passed a 10 Commandments bill that would display the 10 Commandments in every public school in the state. Like, all of these things that Republicans want to do at a national level, they've already trial run it here in Texas. And so I feel like that's also why it's important to have creators here, is because we know not only what's going on, but we know what's coming. We know what's coming down the pipeline and what everyone else is going to have to deal with sooner rather than later.
Why do you think it's the starting point for everything?
Well, Republicans have controlled Texas for 30 years, so there's little to no opposition for them in doing any of these things electorally. But the other reason, I think, is because if a bill is filed in Texas, if the lawsuit to counter it is filed in Texas, if it goes up in the courts, it's going to go up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a pretty conservative appeals court. And so a lot of times, if something in Texas, if there's a lawsuit filed against it and it's appealed up to this very conservative court, which will oftentimes uphold it. And then, then your choice is either to, appeal it up to the Supreme Court or to leave it alone. And, so you have this conservative appeals court, and then you have this conservative Supreme Court, which are likely probably not going to take up a case, because it's very rarely do they take up cases from decisions made by the Fifth Circuit related to Texas policy. But it's kind of perfectly engineered to trial run these things because there aren't many barriers to stop it. And on top of that, I talked about how large Texas is, but Texas is also incredibly diverse. 30 million people. We have the Gulf Coast where I live. You have the Valley, which has a very large Latino population. You have North Texas, which has a very, there's Dallas has a very distinct culture from Houston, and you have, El Paso. So we have so many different communities and cultures here, and it's kind of like almost the perfect petri dish for them to try things out, just because of how diverse and large the state is. And it just ends up working for them. And, even with redistricting, people think that that started here in Texas this year. No. They actually did this in Texas in 2003. So 2003, George W. Bush was going into his midterm election year. Well, before he was president, he was the governor of Texas. And the Speaker of the House at the time, I think he was the House Majority Leader. He was a congressman from Texas, where I grew up, Fort Bend County, named Tom DeLay. And in 2003, they did mid-decade redistricting. Democrats broke quorum. They ended up coming back. But it started here in Texas back in 2003. They gave Republicans 5 more congressional seats all the way back then. And it stood up and it passed. It wasn't struck down. It's so these things that are happening now, they just did the same exact thing here in Texas with redistricting. It's starting in other places now. They made the playbook for doing that here in Texas 22 years ago. And they're trying it again now because they know they've already gotten away with it before. So that's why Texas I find to be just consistently so important, is because it's just set up so perfectly for them to be able to do these things and for them to not really face any consequences or opposition in trying to get those things done.
Whoa. Okay, now I see how you are a teacher. Because you're able to retain a lot of information and kind of know the historical context of different things. So that's really incredible. I feel like, I wonder if it's the power of the internet that is what is bringing a lot of attention to it now, because we as a society don't know that it happened 22 years ago or whenever that was. We're just hearing that it's happening now, and we're hearing it from, I guess, the news and creators and whatnot. So now it seems like we have a chance to counteract it in a big way. Whereas I don't know what happened back then. Maybe it just kind of like slipped under the radar.
Well, no, there was national attention on it back then, but it was because they had to go through traditional media. So, they had to get it broadcast on local media and then national media. And, how long it takes to pick up stories and get reporters and do all this stuff. And the difference this time is they did something similar. They did the same thing. But they also had social media, which just blasted it open so much more wide. then they think of it. And you know what? I'll say this. If social media didn't exist, I don't think that Gavin Newsom would be redistricting in California. Because I think that the sheer volume of social media attention on it and direct feedback to him from his own constituents and from other people made it so apparent to him that this is something he should take up. So, all the way back then, the Democrats who broke quorum in the Senate, actually, it was the current mayor of Houston, John Whitmire, who was in the Texas Senate, who came back and gave him quorum. If he has no haters, I'm dead. He knows I don't like him. I don't like him. He don't like me. But they came back. This time, they also came back. The difference is now they have an ally in the governor of California, and I think that is purely because of social media and those direct lines of communication.
Yeah, I also like how much hype you're giving Newsom. You're
Yes.
like his biggest ally right now.
Yeah, I am. Like
I just deep dive
I love
a
him.
lot of stuff you were creating on him. It was funny. Like I wasn't aware of all those like hot portrayals of him, like saving puppies and
Oh yeah.
being
Yeah,
like a superhero.
I think he's great. I spent my Friday night was riveting. I spent it writing an op-ed about him for a Texas newspaper. But I don't think people understand, like, and maybe you do because you live in Ohio, but being here in Texas as a Democrat is exhausting. It is so exhausting. Every year there's an election, we have this hope of like maybe this is it, and it's only spurred on by the 2018 Senate race we had. In 2018, Beto O'Rourke was 2.85% away from being the senator of the state of Texas. And so now all this hope we have is now spurred back to, well, we were so close in 2018, maybe we can do it now. And it's just year after year, it's just year after year, like, all right, this is it. And then it doesn't happen. And it's so disappointing and it's so disheartening. And so sometimes it really can feel like we are alone in this. Like, no one's going to come save you. No one's going to come do anything to help you. And this is the first time, at least in my memory, that a Democratic governor or Democratic executive who is not from Texas is so concerned with what's happening to people in Texas that they have decided to take up the mantle and do something about it in their state. Now, are there political things that could be motivating Gavin Newsom to do this? Of course there are. But the reality is even if this is someone being ambitious or opportunistic, people are still going to be helped in some way, shape, or another. And so that's why I have a specific fondness and gratitude to Governor Newsom, because he doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to amplify the stories of people living in Texas. He's choosing to do that. And so I really respect it. I'm excited about it. And, what he's doing in California, I think it's going to do more than counteract what's happened in Texas. In Texas, they have 5 congressional seats they drew to be guaranteed Republican. And two of those seats actually are not 100% guaranteed Republican. They went based off of 2024 margins, and it's entirely possible that a Democrat could win those 2 seats. If they were the right kind of Democrat, if they spent the right amount of money, they could win those seats. The way that Newsom and them did the maps in California is it's pretty solidly 5 guaranteed Democratic seats, with 4 other competitive swing seats. So it is possible that, come 2026 midterms, we see not 5 brand new blue seats out of California, we see 9 brand new seats out of California. So even if states like, Missouri, Ohio, South Carolina, whatever, if they start going through with redistricting themselves, they could have to make up that gap too, that because of what Newsom is doing. So I think it's amazing. And, I'm excited to see what other Democratic governors are willing to do.
Oh, okay. Yes. So, can I clarify with you just for anyone who doesn't understand? I mean, I've been doing my own research and I'm not like the most knowledgeable political person in the world, but I am trying to pay attention and learn
Yeah.
what's going on as it happens. So, my understanding is I just want to try to like bring it down to a really basic level because I feel like it's what's happening, normal people don't necessarily understand. So let me try to break it down and you can tell me if I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
So Texas is redistricting, basically trying to get more Republican seats to win over the House for the 2026 election.
Yes, they're
And
trying
then,
to engineer a permanent Republican majority in the U.S. House.
yes. So then, which is unfair because it's happening midway. I mean, it usually happens every 10 years. Like the maps are redrawn every 10 years. And this is happening early,
Yeah, so if you
strategically.
if you think about America as like, think about America as a classroom and congressional seats as like a big box of colored pencils. Like we want to do a project, and this project we're in is called democracy. So we have a big box of colored pencils. Every 10 years, the teacher takes attendance, which is like the census. The teacher figures out who's in the class, where are they sitting in the class, and then the teacher decides, the government decides, in a process that's called reapportionment, where congressional seats are going to go based off population. So the teacher decides how many colored pencils are we going to give to each table based off of how many people are sitting at the table. If you have a table that has less students sitting there, then they need less colored pencils. But if you have a table that has a lot of students sitting there, well, they're going to need more colored pencils in order to do their project. And so we go through this process every 10 years. And a lot of states have their own rules around how that's done. You know, in California, they have an independent redistricting committee, which is kind of like, 3 or 4 of the students at the table decide who's going to use what colored pencils, and then they all vote on it, and it's agreed. In states like Texas, you have 1 or 2 students at the table who decide everything for everyone, and no one else really gets a say. And then in some other states, it's a combination of both. So what Texas is doing is called mid-decade redistricting. They're doing it early, specifically for political gain. So what they're doing, it's like, the teacher hands out these colored pencils to everyone. It's based off population. Everyone has their seats. They've already started working on their project for this term. And Texas decides, you know what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to go get more colored pencils for this side of the table because we think that they deserve more than the other side of the table. And that gives them an advantage in this project we have. And so that's kind of what's going on right now is Texas is purposefully doing this redistricting to give Republicans more seats. They're doing it early. It is purely for partisan reasons. And it's so that they can change the power structure and the balance of the classroom, of the U.S. House, to be controlled by Republicans, regardless of what voters decide in the midterm elections.
Yes. I love that comparison with the colored pencils. And then in California, Gavin Newsom is calling for a special election to redraw the maps there to gain back Democratic seats. But
So
is the stipulation also if Texas stops this, they're not going to do that?
Well, it was, but it's not anymore because Texas is gone through with it. It passed the Texas House, it passed the Texas House, and it passed the Texas Senate. So that language has been removed from how Newsom and how California is going about doing this is a ballot initiative. And what this initiative does is, I believe it's called Prop 50. I think in my interview with him, I think he said we call it Prop 50 because this applies to power in all 50 states. What this does is it temporarily bypasses California's independent redistricting committee to allow for the California legislature to draw the congressional maps. And so what they're doing with this is they are asking the voters for permission to go through with mid-decade redistricting, with the understanding that this is being done to counteract what's happening in Texas. So is it partisan? Is it political? Absolutely. 100% it is. But the thing is, Republicans back in 2021, every single one of them, voted against a national bill that would have banned partisan gerrymandering, which is drawing of congressional lines specifically to make a certain party hold control over that seat. They all voted against it, every single one of them. And now they're using gerrymandering again to their advantage to draw people out of having representation that's reflective of themselves for partisan reasons. And so what Gavin Newsom is doing, I don't think it's hypocrisy at all. I think that it is, I think it's justice. I think that it's Republicans getting what they deserve. They expect nobody to do anything to counteract what they're doing. So that's why I'm very supportive of it. And you know what? I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that if we do this and, in 2028, God willing, we elect a Democratic president and we have control of Congress, that we could finally get through a bill that would ban partisan gerrymandering forever. I think that'd be amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I wish everyone would just play by the rules and allow democracy to be democracy. But I do agree with you that it feels like a necessary move to sort of stand up to what's happening and not just let it go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope everyone votes November 4th.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask you is I feel like you're really bold and unabashed in what you say. You don't really censor yourself. You just kind of communicate from your heart. How are you so bold and don't give a fuck?
Well, believe it or not, I do censor myself.
Do.
Yeah, so what you're hearing is the censored version.
Okay, but it still feels raw.
I think it's very much for me is, I've kind of just been like this my whole life. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I grew up as a fat Mexican girl in Texas, super Christian household. I had just been under scrutiny my entire life. And, God love him, my dad, he always told me, for as conservative as he was growing up, my dad always told me, you can do anything that a man can do, and I actually expect you to do it better.
Yes!
And so he was very, very staunch on making sure his daughters understood that they were powerful and strong and that they should always speak up against what's wrong and always speak up for what's right. And so, I give a lot of credit to my dad for teaching me those lessons. But I think that for me, a lot of it comes from, I started academically getting involved in politics very young. I started debate when I was a freshman in high school. I had done UIL in Texas, which is competitive speaking when I was younger, related to politics. And it just kind of taught me, people are tired of the bullshit. People are tired of, oh, hello, would you like to come up here?
Yay.
People, my cat, people are tired of the fluff. They just want someone to tell them like it is and be honest. And I got that from me watching and researching, being like, oh my gosh, can somebody just tell me the truth about what's going on without putting some kind of agenda down my throat? And so that's kind of led me to where I am now, and I really don't feel bad about it, because the fact of the matter is people like me, whether it be women, whether it be Latinas, whether it be queer people, whether it be, I don't know, Democrats of Texas, have always been told to kind of just, sit back, shut up, be quiet, be mindful, and that is just not how I was raised. And I have no issue telling people they're wrong. And also, it certainly doesn't hurt that I'm 6 feet tall And that I'm very tall. I'm 6 feet tall. And for a good portion of my childhood, my parents actually worked at a children's home. So I wasn't just the youngest of 4, I was the youngest of 11, and I had 8 older teenage brothers. When I was growing up, from ages 13 to 16, I had 8 older teenage brothers. Who, again, like, in a house with that many boys, like, you gotta speak up or you are just gonna be run over. And so it really has translated into what you see on social media. And it is very much like, what you see is what you get. Although I have had a lot of people tell me I'm much nicer than they expect me to be, which is, like, really interesting to hear. Because I don't think I come across mean. I would say I come across more so passionate, but yeah, like, people like it. I just kind of say what I want, and I trust that my lived experience and my research backs up whatever it is I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for being you and just speaking your truth.
Yeah, I love to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and people love it, and I love it. I wish I could do more of that.
I mean, it's not always easy, you know. Like, I would make the bet that outside of actual elected officials, I don't think there are any young political women. I would even say as women in general, political women on social media who have faced as much public backlash and scrutiny as I have. I have literally multiple times since I was a teenager had prominent public figures and prominent publications talk about my body and my politics in a very ugly way, to the point of, you know, I've been on Fox News like 5 times this past year, and it was all about the way that I looked. I've trended on Twitter because of the way that I looked, and it actually doesn't bother me, and it really doesn't get to me, mostly because I seek nothing but academic validation, and the fact that none of them are refuting any of the points I'm ever making actually makes me feel quite good about myself. But it's hard, and I don't know that there's many people who could be this outspoken and then deal with that at the same time, but I feel like by me doing it, it's kind of showing other people that you can do that. You don't have to care what these people say, because at the end of the day, like, actually, I was gonna say no offense, but, like, full offense. People are stupid. Like, the people who are saying these things, they're stupid. And they're threatened by someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And so I feel like it's not just me having an obligation as someone with such a large platform to tell the truth and be honest, but I also feel like I have an obligation as someone who is being attacked so much by the other side, that if I kind of go down, it's like a dip to morale of like damn, they finally took out one of their strongest soldiers who was, like, holding the line for women who are getting attacked on social media. So I just kind of, you know, ride it out and deal with it. But I think that that's also why you don't really see that many young women around my age with, like, very large followings about politics, is because once you open that door, it is very hard to close it, because they are going to be nasty and they are not going to let you forget any of the things that you've ever said.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you were attacked for such low, you know, I feel like it's always a low blow to, like, attack someone based on how they look or just anything superficial. Like, if it's not about the context of what you're saying, then it's just mean. And I don't think people should be mean. Like, I feel like maybe this is just my worldview, but I feel like even if someone has a different opinion, we need to respect each other, or else we're not going to get anywhere as a humanity. But also,
well, I agree with you, but also I give it back to them. The minute someone is mean to me, all bets are off. Like, you've now opened the door for me to be mean to you, and I promise you, after having 8 older teenage brothers, and growing up how I did in rural Texas, the way that I did, I promise I am much meaner than you are, because my insults are creative and intelligent, and they will hurt your feelings. And I think that that's not everyone's vibe. And I've tried the I've tried the be nice thing before. I've tried the let's all come together. And let me tell you something. Some of these people on Twitter, they don't speak that language. Yeah. You gotta speak their language. And I can't tell you the amount of times I have put a man in his place on social media, and then I've met him in real life, and he did not say a single thing to me to my face. And so you know what? That's the other part of this, is remembering social media is not real life. And a lot of these people that say these things about you, they would never dare to tell it to you directly, ever.
Yeah, I know, that's so true. And I feel like I saw that you were able to raise like a ton of money for abortion, weren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was abortion funds. It was in 2022, so it was actually right after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Of all people, Congressman Matt Gaetz decided to start talking about me, which was very stupid, but I think he started talking about me because I think he expected me to just kind of have this meltdown about it and do the whole woke liberal thing that I think they were expecting, but I didn't. I responded to being like, look, I might let people make me feel bad about myself, but I'm not gonna let an alleged pedophile make me feel bad about myself. So you should watch your mouth. And I started posting memes of like me as like a WWE wrestler beating him up and like fundraising for abortion funds, and people were just so taken aback by it, and they thought it was so funny that it just blew up and it exploded, and it was international news. It was everywhere, and we were able to, in just 5 days, raise $2.3 million for abortion funds across the country. And it was absolutely insane because it was just such a feel-good story and such a feel-good moment at a time that was just so overwhelmingly sad. It was, this 19-year-old who lives in, of all places, Texas, is doing all this amazing work to help put attention on abortion funds. And, we had some of the abortion funds reaching out, talking about how much money they'd received from this. I think at the end of the day, each abortion fund received, I want to say a little over $50,000. And like, for some of them, like, that's a whole other staff member. Like, that's dozens of clinic appointments or travel fees for patients who need care. And it was just so heartwarming to see all those stories. And so that's kind of my whole thing, is anytime people put attention on you, whether it's positive or negative, you have to understand this is an attention economy. So if there are eyes on you, you can use those to your advantage. And that's what I consistently try to do every time I have one of these like larger scale attacks against me, is what positive can we bring from that? So in that instance, we raised a bunch of money for abortion funds. But I also had all this attention on me, and so I started campaigning for Democrats in the 2022 election. I did campaigning for Charlie Crist in Florida. I did campaigning for Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. I did campaigning for Stacey Abrams in Georgia, Beto O'Rourke in Texas. And I really just started hammering home the fact of, we really need to understand that this is an electoral problem on top of a mutual aid problem. And that is, to date, I think the greatest accomplishment of my life is being able to take this moment that should have been so ugly and so hateful, and quite literally turning it into healthcare for thousands of people.
Wow. Yes, you're able to take something super negative and turn it into the best possible outcome, like transforming poison into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Thank you. Yeah, I just love the work you do, and I'm grateful you exist and that you're taking the time to talk to me.
Well, thank you. That's so nice.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to end on or say before we conclude?
All politics is local politics. I don't want to hear you complain if you don't know who your city council, your county commissioner is. Go figure that out. Go figure out when those elections are and start getting involved at a local level, because that's where we really can make a difference. You know, Donald Trump might give the orders from the White House, but he's not the person enforcing them. It's your sheriff, it's your mayor, and that's why these seats are so important and why they matter so much. So get involved locally, grow in the ground that you're planted in, and that's how we can start making things better for everyone here in America.
Yay! Thank you. I'll put all your handles in the show notes. And
thank you.
I know everyone will follow you and support you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching or listening. Please rate, review, give this podcast 5 stars. It makes a difference. Love and appreciate you. Bye.